the Roma people believe that they're not being listened to. The Roma people believe that they're not being catered for like we are catering for other groups. And Shabana and her team had actually gone and talked to the people, created a meeting with 85 people, with the children in one of the schools in Rotherham. Then we didn't necessarily know what the problems were, so we were just touching the surface.
Zainab Rasool, who works for Rotherham United, worked with me on this project and was very, very supportive. Our Rotherham United colleague, the Community Trust team were very helpful. We did a number of consultations, and a piece of work was commissioned to Rotherham United to deliver the consultation in Ferrum Community Centre. So the perception was, even my own perception was, that when you have a consultation, you don't get a lot of turnout, and it's very hard to keep the adults focused and answer questions, etc. But my experience consulting with the Roma community was completely different. We made sure that there's a nice atmosphere, the children were catered for, you know, they had activities to engage, so they could actually sit down and talk. I had an interpreter organised, we had flip charts, etc. And there was so much to say, the Roma community had so much to say. And I actually asked them the question that, have you had an opportunity to say what you're saying now beforehand? And they did actually say no, because where they have been previously, there have been fun days organised, etc., but not a consultation where there's other things organised and them to have an opportunity to actually speak and say what they want to say without feeling uncomfortable or without feeling like they're being ungrateful.
Now we do know what the problems are, we're going to try and tackle them.
I'd just like to welcome everybody here. It's so good to see a diverse representation of the workforce in Rotherham.
Rotherham and the region itself has a proud history of helping to integrate new communities, whether it's the Pakistani communities or the Bangladeshi communities or the Yemeni communities, and we are absolutely determined to make sure that the new communities that have arrived here, that we'll work very, very closely with them and try to solve the issues together.
I think it's going to be a tremendous help to us to actually try to shape services for the future, because we've seen a tremendous rise in the demographics in a number of our communities, and it's imperative that we share learning from throughout the region.
We need to make sure we're dealing with this set of vulnerable customers or vulnerable people living in our towns, and we need to make sure this conference highlights some of those key issues and also puts in place some facts, puts in place the actual issue in context and how we're going to actually deal with the problem. And I think that's what we're learning here today with the key speakers and with the report that was published.
Yeah, I think it's really useful to share the practice across the region, because we've people here from other local authority areas, and the fact that we have Roma in Rotherham is not unique. There are Roma communities in Bradford, in Leeds, in Sheffield, and Doncaster, etc. So it's important to learn from other areas as to what they're doing, because it may have a direct bearing on us. And likewise, what we're trying to do is some case studies and examples of what's been happening in Rotherham, so that they may in turn learn from us.
In terms of this morning, it's been really useful to see so many people in a room discussing the issue, and particularly to see the level of political buy-in and ownership that Rotherham is giving it. I think the profile of the issue in Rotherham makes it into something that people clearly want to discuss. I think coming together to share expertise and learning about how to deal with it can only be good.
I think we in Rotherham have a head start. We have a political will to address these issues, and we are addressing them, and hopefully with on the back of this this report and the learnings that we are going to take from this conference, because you know we've got representation from throughout the region, that we will put plans in place. We will have a targeted approach to start working towards making sure that we try to make we ensure that we have good community relations with all our communities.
I think the community and families and partners working together is really a useful idea that has come out of this day.
So far this morning, I think the conference has been great. I think it's been quite inspirational how Rotherham has been successfully working in a multi-agency way. I know we're doing that in Sheffield, but it just felt like things have really happened here.
It's concerning in the economic climate that perhaps in years gone by we had more resources to be able to put into some of these programmes, but I do think there is an expertise in Rotherham that we can join together and actually make strides with this particular community. So I've enjoyed it, I found it interesting, and I'm quite hopeful for the kind of work that we can take forward. And I'm glad I've had the opportunity to come today to listen to the speakers and have some thinking time to think how I might play a part in the kind of things that we're going to develop.
What do you think?
In terms of what the barriers are with the issue, I mean, clearly it's a very difficult to engage group. It's a group that has got a long history of persecution, that hasn't really had any positive contact with authorities of any sort for generations. I think that makes it very, very difficult for a local authority or another service provider to engage with the group, to have a dialogue with the group about what its needs are.
We've already discussed this morning about the fact that the Roma community are used to being excluded or discriminated against, and it's difficult for them to reorientate themselves in a way to see public services and indeed voluntary and community services as being there to help them rather than to hinder them.
The trust that was talked about this morning, that once those parents start realising that we're not there to persecute, but to help, then I think we can start moving forward with that.
Clearly a lot of good work's going on in Rotherham about how that dialogue can begin, but it's going to take time because you can't overcome such a long history of exclusion and persecution in a very short period of time.
It's been great to see so much enthusiasm, energy from all the officers attended, everybody participating. Such an enthusiasm. Many participants have said they can't wait to actually go back to their place of work and actually share this information, look at how are they going to make changes, and that is a great success.
I think the other key barrier is that getting the data and understanding what the needs of the group are, how many people are living here, where they're living. We're still not very good at capturing some of that, and I think until we actually understand what the population of any area is, it's very hard to plan and deliver effective services.
One of the biggest issues is having the intelligence of the number of families that we have coming into our communities, because without having the full intelligence of that, it's very difficult to actually tailor services to meet the demands of the new communities. And this is one of the barriers to sort of engagement, is that we have a very fluid and a transient community.
The secondary school children, they are not going into schools and we are losing children. So there are issues also about safeguarding where these young people are, and if they don't register and they don't actually go on to the school roll and then they move because of the family, then we are losing children and we don't know where they are going. Mm-hmm. So there's a real issue about safeguarding here.
We need to be clear in the way we approach this. It needs to be more partnership approach. There needs to be intelligence gathering, as in, where the issues are. And with the A8 registration schemes, etc., finishing in April, it's going to come down to what people know on the ground. Do local authorities, health services, and other statutory bodies know their communities? And one of the biggest requirements on local authorities from the government is, do you know your communities? And the Roma community is a key member of the community. We need to make sure we know who they are. We need to make sure what kind of issues do they have around health, around housing problems, around education, and how we need to tackle those issues. That's what we need to do. Do it smarter.
In terms of some of the solutions moving forward, I think working more effectively together, multi-agency working, I know it's a cliche, but it's the only thing that will make a difference in terms of addressing some of the underlying issues. I think we do need to build partnerships both within the region between local authorities to share learning and expertise, but also beyond that to talk to people on mainland Europe about understanding the context that people are coming from and how to deal with some of their issues.
And it's also trying to encourage that level of community ownership, because only when you have people who have a sense of belonging to a place that they will actually start to take measures to try to integrate with the host community, and then that way that improves the neighbourhoods for everyone, because this is not about addressing just the issues of the new communities, it's about the addressing of the issues of the host community and the established communities here as well.
And I think the other thing we need to get a lot better at is engaging the community itself. The solution to these problems will rest within the community with community development, community leadership, and local authorities need to embrace that.
What's come from today is that they're all appreciative that somebody's actually put a conference together, and that's thanks to Shabana and the support that she's received from LGYH and Rotherham Council to actually do this.
It's proved how much there is a need to provide a forum like this, to have an event like this where we can share information, we can look at good practice, share good practice, provide an opportunity to ask questions without feeling, is that the right question, is it not?
Referrals to any front desk or children's services around domestic violence issues. That's been recognised in Rotherham, and there's ongoing work between ourselves in children's services and adult services, social care in terms of the transitions and all the rest of it, to look at domestic violence, how we can work better with domestic violence. We have domestic violence advocates in Rotherham. We need to look at what they do and how we can protect them and maybe support them further. And we're taking that through as well, and you'll get this act out, so through the Safer Rotherham Partnership. There's a lot of work ongoing, so there's some duplication of work. What we're going to do is target that more so we hit the areas. If not, we're going to keep getting these calls. It's going to benefit us all at the end of the day.
It's early intervention and prevention. There was talk on a preschool project which engages the families under 5 in services already, which then has a knock-on effect to them being ready to go into primary schools, which and having that level to get into primary schools, and therefore raising their attainment and attendance. So I think that was something definitely that I'd like to take back to Sheffield anyway.
We had a very good group, and it was helped by the fact that we had representatives from Sheffield, the probation service and the voluntary and community sector in Leeds, as well as colleagues from Rotherham who work with children and families from the Roma community. And the 3 key issues we brought out were, firstly, raising people's awareness of what they have a right to expect, and in doing that we have to overcome a number of things. An acceptance that this is better than what we're used to, that there's a cultural norm with people coming together and living together, and a fear of them reporting things for what the consequences will be in respect of landlords. And a big theme running throughout that point was the importance of agencies having access to interpreters, people like Mikal here in Rotherham, agencies having access to people like him who they can work with. The second point was around landlords, and we talked there about everything and anything from accreditation through to selective licensing, even down to 1 street or 2 in some areas, and also training landlords as well and making them aware of their responsibilities. And then the third point was about having a multi-agency team, the type of team they have in Sheffield, where colleagues come together every month, discuss particular cases, make cross-referrals and discuss those cases at those meetings, because the irony is that staff from community protection and area assembly in the workshop upstairs had not met before our colleagues who are working with children and families on a daily basis, and clearly there's a lot of information we can share there, and so I think that's something we intend setting up here.
Main points. Well, we definitely discuss that the experience back from the Czech Republic is different than here. So, for example, we would have to make appointments to go to, we don't need to make an appointment to go to a GPs, whereas in here we are expected to phone up, make an appointment and wait 2 days, whereas back in the Czech Republic we would be seen immediately. We've got, for example, we have to pay for auto contraception for our abortion, so people wouldn't ask here for it because they would expect to pay, which they can't afford. So we've been just talking about the different culture.
Especially in discussion and conversation around all key issues about community cohesion. To start with, is an issue about interpretation. Cohesion means different things to different people, so therefore we need to get some clarity around the subject matter. We explored 2 very good initiatives: the Unity Centre in Rotherham and all their activity that they're doing, and also the West Yorkshire Police PACT meeting, which is about consultation, engagement, but making sure the communication and feedback loop takes place. It's no good talking to people, asking them questions, raising their expectations, and then not going back to them and telling them what's changed as a result of that conversation.
Big thing that was brought up by the manager of the Unity Centre, actually, which is a fantastic project in Rotherham that's been praised previously, is communication and language skills of the adults that Councillor Stone mentioned earlier.
I was very impressed when I went to a Roma event recently, when they announced that the ESOL classes, which is English as a Second Language classes, there was a very large queue immediately formed from all the Roma who were there. So clearly a great interest in learning English.
We have PACT meetings, partners and communities together meetings. We have them in Rotherham, Sheffield, I think Somerset Leeds have them, or Wakefield have them as well. Having targeted PACT meetings where they can bring up issues in what they perceive to be relative safety. We talked about language line pooling. That's us all pooling our funds together to supply language line. And the last thing is a partnership approach. We all talk about it, we all say it day in, day out, we should be working together, work smarter, not harder. But let's do it. Us in this room have the capacity and the ability to make that partnership work. So let's do that, please. Thanks a lot.
I've had colleagues saying they're going to go back, make different changes. So all in all, it has been a great success. We've had over 100 participants. We've had an opportunity to share information, learn information, and also look at how are we going to work differently and have plans in place to measure how has this information and piece of work impacted on service delivery to meet the needs of the children and families in Rotherham and across Yorkshire and Humber.